This is a podcast for the change makers, earth shakers, paradigm shifters, trailblazers, black sheep, self-healers, and generational pattern changers. For the heart-centered rebel who craves deep connection, transparent conversation, and real talk about transformation. These are conversations for renegades by renegades. And this is from the heart of a renegade.
Please be advised, this show may contain sensitive subjects and a lot of F-bombs.
How does one forgive the unforgivable?
This is one of my favorite topics of discussion because I don't know that there is one single thing that has changed my life so much as forgiveness has.
Really?
And there's a lot of people who cannot wrap their head around, but how do you forgive something that is truly unforgivable? How do you forgive the darkest aspects of humanity?
That's an incredible question. You want to unpack it?
Let's unpack it.
Okay.
Let's go.
Well, can I ask you the question first of when you say the unforgivable, what did that mean to you before you found the forgiveness?
There's things that people have either done to me or things that I have seen done in the world where it's like, that is unforgivable. How do you possibly forgive such a betrayal or such abuse or something that inflicts so much pain and harm on especially innocent beings? How do you do that? How do you justify that?
Wow. And I mean, that's a really good question because there's a lot of things always happening in the world, depending on how plugged in you are to them versus not. And you have an experience specific to you that unlocked all of this, which I'm guessing is why it's one of your favorite topics.
Because forgiveness changed every facet of my life. I feel like the biggest level, I would say forgiveness initiated a quantum leap.
Okay, tell us what was life like before forgiveness? Do you remember?
For sure I remember. Okay.
Can you describe it?
We kind of talked about this, I think, in the episode where I think it was Meet the Founder. Life before forgiveness was filled with a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, and then as a result, a lot of behaviors that would perpetuate that cycle. So those behaviors could be drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes, things like that just are like an assault on the body. It's poisoning myself, but the emotions that were beneath the surface were already there.
Right.
So if I don't believe that I deserve forgiveness for those things, of course, or for other things that I have done in my life, of course I'm going to poison myself in different ways because I haven't forgiven my own past.
Well, I guess when we break down behavior and identity at its core, we talk about our subsoma feedback loop, and it's the thermostat that we exist within that was the environment basically that we grew up in and the thoughts and the beliefs and the judgments, et cetera, that surrounded us before we were even 9 years old. And a lot of that sets the stage of what we believe we can have and can't have in our life and what the world has to look like or how we are supposed to behave as humans. And so we have something called subconscious programs that we look at inside of SIT. And one of the subconscious programs, it relies inside of self-abuse and self-punishment. As one of the emotions as well that we look at in the emotion chart is self-abuse. And so that's kind of where I see this being pinned, is it becomes a part of the core identity. I must abuse myself in some capacity, and therefore I am not allotted to have something like forgiveness because I must maintain this core identity or belief system that I must punish myself for something.
Wow.
And until that comes to a place of awareness, which is where it sounds like you got with your forgiveness journey, that all of this came up to the surface, that it's like, well, maybe that's not actually true. And that I wonder if that's like one of the first steps of going into, okay, well, how do we actually change that? And so you had all of this behavior that was either self-punishing or self-abusive before you found the forgiveness and the change that allowed you to be who you are today.
And including hanging out with certain people who also did not respect me or who who didn't have the capacity to love me, right? So those kinds of behaviors as well, of like seeking out relationships that would validate whatever I felt within myself.
Wow.
Right? Yeah.
This is that whole concept. I mean, I was just talking to you about it the other day, where it's that internal belief system and the narrative that's running on the inside subconsciously most people can identify it. I spend a lot of time listening to people, so you can identify it through language, because you have said this before, that the words that you are speaking create the world that you exist within.
Exactly, yeah.
And as a result of that is so subconscious in nature, right? And so when we talk about energetics and what's happening inside of the system, if you have a belief that you can't be respected and that you have to punish yourself and you have to abuse yourself, that creates an energetic resonance that goes out. So it's like a frequency wave, just in the same way that Bluetooth bounces through your house and then gets to your device, like your phone or your computer or your TV. It's the same concept. Mm-hmm. And so if we apply the same concept in regards to our human body and our belief system and the frequency of that belief system, which is in self-punishment versus self-love, then you will emit that outside of you.
Right.
And whatever is outside of you will then match it.
So then the question is, where did it come from? Why did that exist to begin with? Because it's not like we're born that way.
Aren't we?
It's not like we're born with the decision of I'm not worthy of love.
Right.
Things happen, things get programmed in our subconscious mind. And so for me growing up, I had a dad who was suicidal all the way from when I was 1. Mm-hmm. All the way as a little baby. So of course I'm picking up on his energy of not wanting to be here.
Yeah.
But then the thing about kids is we make our parents or the people around us, especially our caregivers at that time, their inability to be present means something about our ability to be loved. Mm-hmm. So when I think back to how I was raised living with my dad, who allowed a dragon he allowed a snake into the den. We'll call it that. He allowed a woman who was she was jealous of a 5-year-old. Like, she was jealous of my dad loving his own child. All of the ways that she treated my brother and I, which were so unkind, so unloving, withholding love, locking us out of the house, not letting me eat after school, but letting my stepniece come inside to eat. Like, there was things like that we endured that I then, of course, naturally internalized. Mm-hmm. This must mean something about me on an individual level. Why is dad letting this happen to me? Was all that narrative that I would start to create, that I would then go out later on in life as a teenager and then go and find other relationships that are going to reflect that back, that belief.
Right.
So when I talk about forgiving the unforgivable, there was a narrative that was embedded within my psyche that created those self-punishment programs, because of everything that I made mean about maybe his inability. Why didn't he protect me? Why wasn't he there? Et cetera, et cetera. Why did he let this happen with this woman? All of these things, right? Later on in life, when I was probably 15, I decided to come out to my dad as being queer. And it was a very scary, very vulnerable moment, but my brother was so accepting, my mom was so accepting, and so I was like, I'm gonna tell him, because this is who I am. And I decided to do it in the middle of West Edmonton Mall, which is just like a really unhinged decision.
For anybody who doesn't know what West Edmonton Mall is, it's one of the largest malls in the world. There's over like 800 stores in it. It's a huge ecosystem that exists in the center of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada.
Yeah,
it's
like
massive.
People come to see the mall.
Huge place.
Huge, massive,
big.
Very big energy in this
big
mall.
Boy.
Huge, gigantic. So I tell him this, and his response is, he is so repulsed visibly, viscerally, and then literally says, "That's disgusting. Shave your head, I don't care, but being gay is wrong." So this is his response in this moment. So then I'm just like, I'm shocked, I'm rattled, I'm stunned, I'm ashamed, I'm experiencing all of these things. And that was really difficult because then through the rest of the time that he was still on this earth, I never really wanted to talk to him about like partners or anything like that because I was scared of his judgment. And there was even times where I would lie that I had a boyfriend just to try and like, you know, fix what I felt might have been done to his perception of me and the love that he would or would not have. But V, one of the most powerful moments in my life was after he had passed away, and he passed away by suicide. So anybody who dies from that decision, they must be tormented on a level that is no one can fully understand. What I found out during my healing journey of reaching out to his siblings and having conversations is I found out that when I was in the womb of my mom, she found a letter. And the letter caused her complete shock, complete whoa, and she just kind of folded it up and didn't talk about it. But you know that emotions transferred to babies. Can you talk about that for a moment?
Oh, yeah. I mean, from the moment of conception, there is energetic data that's being transferred all the time. Like there are other cultures that would make you meditate as the mother. The mother would have to meditate like an hour every day to make sure that her energy was cleansed and clean, we'll put it that way, and at a higher frequency. And then anybody who came into her presence would also have to do that so that their energy, because the concept was based on, same thing, if we go back to like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, like those waves are transferring through the air at all times. Some of us just happen to know when we get a message or something without our phone making, and it's just because we're aware of the energy and the frequency. And so we also know in that same capacity when we're in somebody's company and being like, are you okay? And they're like, yeah, I'm fine. You're like, you don't seem okay, right? because we're still feeling the frequency, even though there's maybe nothing tangible to attach to it. And so when we look at that from a pregnancy perspective, and this isn't to shame or put down any way that people are like raising their kid or in that environment, right? You only know what you know when you're in the moment. And so what they have shown though is that based on the environment that a child is developing in, because the brain develops first, then it can change the way that the energy is attached to this human being. And so we say that transfers down the kidney line or the kidney energy inside of Chinese medicine. And so all of this data transfers. We mostly talk about it as genetic material. Oh, mom's eyes are blue, baby's eyes are blue. Oh, mom has brown hair, or you know what I mean? Like those sorts of genetic factors. What we don't formally talk about is the energetic frequency, emotional data that's also being transferred that maybe wasn't dealt with from a parents or grandparents or anybody that was surrounding this person while they were pregnant with a baby in the womb.
Wow.
That data can definitely begin to shape the belief system and the way that their consciousness works.
Well, and doesn't anxiety cross through the blood-brain barrier in the same way that alcohol does?
It could. I mean, when you look at it from a hormonal factor or just the movement of that moving through the body, I would say that anything is really susceptible to some fetus that is inside of the body.
Yeah.
Everything passes through. And so emotionally, when we talk about your mom reading this letter and having the shock while you were in the womb, you would experience that at the same time.
For sure, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so fast forward to being in my 20s and dad dies by suicide, and I'm looking for answers. I knew that he had struggled with mental health, but I was looking for answers. And I got wind of this letter, and then I started to talk to my aunties, and I discovered that my dad was a victim and a perpetrator of incest sexual activity as a teenager. So he was old enough to know better. He was about 15, but young enough to be influenced by an older person who was brought in, that my grandma had brought in to essentially foster. And they did some really bad things, like really bad things, and a lot of shame-ridden things. Now, I think a lot of people would maybe find this out about a parent and have a reverse effect, but I had a fucking eureka. Like, it literally, when I found out about this, it was like handcuffs were immediately released. I was released from shackles of shame that did not belong to me.
Wow.
Because what I realized was all of the ways that he was projecting wrongness onto my sexuality was only internalized hatred and shame that he had, and guilt that he had towards himself that he never forgave. So then I took it even further back, where it's like not even my sexuality and his inability to love me in that moment and all of the projection that he put on top of me, but all the way back to like the partner that he chose. I'm like, no wonder he chose that woman, because that's what he believed he deserved. But I made it mean something about me.
Wow.
Why is he not protecting me? It's because he can't even protect himself.
Or his own family when he was a teen.
Yeah. And so I had so much compassion and grace towards my dad for that level of shame, guilt, heaviness that he would have carried for as many years as he did. And then the decisions that it led him to make in his life about what he believed he was worth or not because of the lack of forgiveness.
And so, wow, this is all so powerful. Like, how did you break out of that mold? Because here he is at those ages, storing that data in his body that would transfer into you as a tiny little seed.
Yeah.
About what you can and cannot have in a relationship, or what you do deserve and do not deserve or are worthy of. And then that was reflected even in your nature with the partners that you chose and the things you chose to do recreationally or activity wise.
Yeah.
That was self-punishment inducing or self-abusive. What broke you out of that? Because when I sit here across from you, I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I would say we have one of the most compassionate, trusting, deeply loving on a soul level relationship. And I'm like, how did you get from there to here?
That is the grace of God.
That's the grace of God. What's happening? Forgiveness is...
I was just gonna say, Riley's coming through again, and I'm like,
what is Riley saying?
For anybody who's listened to all of our podcast episodes to date, I think there's only been one where we haven't cried about Riley, but I talked about getting Riley and how she was a massive catalyst for me to also change my life. This was before I met you. Mm-hmm. And when I got her, I had adopted her from this family. Well, yeah, she was only 3 months old. Their daughter was allergic, and I went and picked Riley up on their daughter's birthday, which felt really difficult. The little girl was crying, and it was the best day of my life and the worst day of hers to that point. And Riley's name was Grace. Her name was Grace when I got her. And I was like, you are not like a mastiff with big slobbery lips and ears that are way bigger than her head and paws that are...
She wasn't the most graceful.
She was not. But she was a gift from God. And it's just such a good question. How? I think there was micro choices and micro decisions that ended up ultimately leading me to you. And one of those things was I literally wrote a letter to God and I said, I'm ready for my life partner. I'm ready. Help me find that person and be the person who can have them. And then I got dragged by a chain through several layers of my past, and I had to say no to certain things until I actually found you. So it was actually a several month journey before you came through. But that's grace for sure. And I think forgiveness and grace go hand in hand. Like, it is grace in its purest form, or forgiveness in its purest form is it's grace. Mm-hmm. And for me to say that my dad, for example, doesn't forgive, for me to say that my dad doesn't deserve forgiveness, why? Why should he not deserve that grace? Of course, I forgave him immediately. And I think when you have context and you can understand why someone else is the way that they are, then you can remove yourself from the equation. So if somebody harms you and you are actually to just imagine somebody harming you, imagine somebody speaking like terrible words right at you, and you just take 2 steps to the right so the words go right past you and there was a mirror behind you. That's what's happening. When someone is projecting pain and evil and hurt and everything onto you, it really has nothing to do with you.
Because their words are showing you their world. Exactly.
And so if you can remove yourself from the equation and realize this has nothing to do with me, that is a much easier way to, because I think forgiveness can be a really elusive, but like, how do you forgive? Mm-hmm. And I think the first step is realizing it had nothing to do with you to begin with.
Right. When I look at this, because we get this question a lot in our training, like, what do I do if someone's not ready to forgive, or how do you get them to that place? And I mean, out of the thousands of sessions and teachings, and, there's a layer usually in front of the forgiveness. There's the resentment, there's the betrayal, there's the heartbreak, there's the anger, there's the grief that really need to be looked at as if that can't move and that can't be consolidated. And the truth of the matter is that's currently sitting solidified inside of the body, which is why it keeps recreating it. It just hangs out in this loop, kind of like you talked about. So here's your dad. That's what he, surrounded himself with environmentally, belief system wise. That's all he deserved. And then here you are recreating the pattern until it broke and you chose to basically pray.
Yes.
Through this letter form, and then your prayer is answered, and you had to face how was that system created? What are all the things that you now have to reconcile, atone with, to say no to stop the pattern from continuing? Mm-hmm. And I find that's oftentimes one of the steps. Of course, removing yourself from this and going, okay, wait a second. If this is a repetitive circumstance, what within me needs to be consolidated, looked at, forgiven, so that it doesn't repeat again? And then from there, that's where, looking at the layers. And oftentimes, I'll speak for myself, when I've seen some of the most difficult circumstances I've looked at with clients. I've had clients whose parents were murdered. I've had clients who had molested their grandchildren. I've had clients whose family have died and they couldn't stop it. And it's like, how do you reconcile that? Mm-hmm. How do you forgive yourself for those things? And it is often the question of, who did it to you? What happened to you in this? And what has been your experience? And seeing that experience, this is why, I was washing the dishes earlier, and the self-help industry is so huge. But how can you see yourself when there's no external factor that's reflecting something back to you? That takes a lot of practice, through maybe meditation but there's still some sort of directiveness or instruction in how to find that. And so in a self-help industry, how do you sit with yourself and try and find your way outside of that without any external factor to guide you?
I love that. You're so right, because I was just playing pickleball last week with this group of humans, and I remember I had told you I think I'm really hard on myself because I had it reflected back to me because we're all playing just for fun. And there was this one night I was playing so bad and I was hard on myself. Apparently I just would go, oh, fuck, I missed the shot. And it was clearly intense enough that I had two different external people be like, it's okay. We're just having fun. And I thought, oh, that's interesting that they're reflecting this back. And then it had me check my language because I wasn't aware of my own language until I had an external perception kind of mirror it
bounce
back.
it up to the surface. Yeah. And so this whole concept of forgiveness, where there's the layers of, well, yeah, let's consolidate the grief, the anger, the bitterness, the resentment. Why don't we soften some of that? And then why don't we look at, well, is it this external mechanism? It's so easy to be like, they're the problem. They did this to me, which just perpetuates you staying in a victim role as if you can't get out of it yourself. Like it's just going to keep happening. And the whole purpose, for me in my work, is to make every single client, student, like victorious in their life, to reclaim their autonomy and their self-authority, to be like, oh no, this is happening. It's happening for me. If it's repeated, it's happening to try and get my attention to change it and choose something different. And so this piece of forgiveness of, it's easy to look at the external, but like you said, if we're mad at something external and we allow that external thing to step to the side and the mirror bounces it back to us, what is it trying to show us? What is the internal mechanism inside of us that we've buried so far down, that is in such a shadow, but really it's part of our core identity or our core belief about what we do or do not deserve?
I can tell a story about a client who I worked on who had extreme shoulder pain that nothing would resolve.
Okay.
And this is just such a beautiful bridge because that was exactly what happened with this guy. So he had this shoulder pain. He had tried all of the typical things and he ended up in my office when I worked in person.
Back when you were a practitioner?
Back in the day, back when I was a practitioner. And yeah, the reveal days.
Oh my gosh, those were such good days.
It was a sweet time back then. So he had this shoulder pain that nothing would resolve. And the memory that came up was from sometime in his 20s, and there was a lot of guilt associated and a lot of grief. And when I had asked him what happened around that time, he really had a hard time even like getting this and expressing himself. His best friend had been diagnosed with some sort of a critical illness that he was not going to make it through. But my client was just starting his career. So he was like just on the upward trajectory. He had a lot going on and he kept putting off going back home, which was a flight away, to go and see his best friend. And somebody had reached out and was like, you really should come. And he was like, I'm in the middle of this. I need to get this launched, whatever he was doing. And he missed the opportunity. And he had a lot of guilt about that. But what was really interesting was the story that he came into the office with was a lot of resentment that he was experiencing towards his wife. And he had just kind of like talked about it because, when clients sit down, it's like, okay, what's going on in your world right now? And he had talked about a lot of resentment that he was dealing with towards his wife. His wife happened to be away a lot during this time because she was going and spending a lot of time with her sister who was dying. So there's the pattern that's overlaying. Was he really angry with his wife, or was she mirroring something within him that he was having a lot of resentment, anger, guilt, remorse about within himself? Because she was choosing to spend time with her sister and he didn't choose that when he had the opportunity to, however many decades, like this was decades later. And so all of that internally that he was holding on to is now being reflected. So now instead of him going inwards before he came into the session and we made these links together, he was projecting his anger towards himself onto her.
Yeah.
And it was her circumstance that was triggering his shoulder pain.
Which is wild, because if we just like rewind for a second and we talk about sit and the beauty of sit, is that essentially we have either large events or micro events that have sensory data that's attached to it. You know, it's literally too much, too soon, too fast, or not enough for way too long. And I like to hover on the not enough for way too long right now because of the Trust the Channel, where I had asked everybody on the call, what is the one thing that you just need to hear? And a lot of them needed to hear, it's going to be okay. And so that's the not enough for too long, where these people are starving for, of course you'll be okay. Anyways, so there's just all of this data, too much, too soon, too fast, or not enough for too long. And when a human experiences all of that at once, and it can be too much all at once to try and digest and process, especially when you are a young kid, it's more challenging to process that just because the understanding's not there until you're basically in puberty. And then you start to understand your world a little bit differently. So spilled glass of water to a 1-year-old is very different to a spilled glass of water when you're 30. Okay.
Yeah.
And anyways, I want to explain this because it's really important that when that data is not resolved, the overwhelming data in the moment, so that can be the sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch, that's all locked in there. Well, if you can't process it all in the moment, it stays open just like a file folder that you can't freaking get shut on your filing cabinet because there's too much stuff that's poking out all over the place. And so when we use SIT, we actually revisit these moments, whether they're seemingly insignificant or they're super large memories, pillars, and we help consolidate the data in there, the sensory data as well as the emotional data, so that the filing cabinet door can shut again. So when I think about this client of yours, right, that you're telling, there's all of this, how much self-resentment did he have that he couldn't consolidate? It was just way too much in the moment. Here he is with his business, his friend is dying. It's too much to do all by yourself in that moment. So what do? We suppress it until we can then look at it later. But a lot of us don't go back to look at it until our shoulder hurts so bad that we don't know why nothing is working.
Yeah.
And so what a beautiful opportunity, even though painful again, to revisit, well, she's the problem. Well, no, she's not the problem. She's doing the thing that you wish you had done.
Yes.
And this is the self-loathing, self-resentment that you have. And this is the piece that I was talking about before we started this episode that I find to be one of the biggest emotional hurdles that I see students, clients, anybody I'm working with. The biggest emotional hurdle is the self-forgiveness. So in this case, for your client, I forgive myself for believing I have to resent myself until the day I die because I couldn't be there. Mm-hmm. That's my punishment. That's my payoff.
That's my punishment. That I forgive myself for believing I have to experience this guilt for the rest of my life to prove how much I really did care about my best friend. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you know what's so powerful though about forgiveness? And when he, like in his case, let's say him experiencing self-forgiveness, how much more of a present and supportive spouse would he then be able to be towards his partner? Mm-hmm. And so when you asked that question earlier of like around your and my relationship, well, look at how much we have forgiven ourselves and forgiven betrayals that were done unto us. How much we have forgiven so many different things actively. Like we have like actively chosen this lifestyle. It's not always easy.
Yeah.
And by the way, forgiving people does not necessarily mean that you're not mad at them or that you don't experience anger or that you don't experience grief. Mm-hmm. That's two different. And I think that's the difference. I think a lot of people think forgiveness means I'm not also going to have these complex feelings. Like
right.
You can forgive somebody and choose not to let them back in your life.
Absolutely.
But I think in that case, that's probably a big reason why you and I have such a beautiful relationship is because we've worked through so much forgiveness in other aspects of our lives. And so we're able to be more present for each other.
I think you're right. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things, you know, just as I prepare right now to marry a couple coming up. And one of the things that I really dove into in A Course in Miracles, A Course in Miracle doesn't talk about marriage. It talks about being in relationship with others to actually rediscover who you are and to find the best and purest version of yourself through the reflection through other people.
Wow. So you better choose your partner wisely.
Yes. Yes. It can either be a really challenging relationship because both have to be willing to grow, right? But the one thing that I wanted to mention in regards to this specifically is a lot of people are like, they don't deserve my forgiveness for what they did. And so there's a misconception that the forgiveness is for the other person, which can be incredibly healing for somebody who is looking, to grow through the experience of what they did. Mm-hmm. But for the person who is like, you don't deserve that. Mm-hmm. The truth of the matter is the forgiveness isn't for the other person. It's actually to let you off the hook.
Yes.
You out of the story and you to get off from looping and spinning in what happened. It's like it totally, like you said, it's like the chains that were on your wrists just drop.
Well, and it's like, I think of forgiveness and withholding forgiveness is like you are literally holding on to an electric rod, electrocuting yourself and being like, I'm not letting go because you don't deserve it. And it's like, but if you let go, you'll stop electrocuting yourself. Mm-hmm. The other thing I want to say is, who are you to play God?
Whew.
Like, who are you who gets to decide who deserves forgiveness or not?
Wow. That's a very good question. I remember when we were first writing the manual for the SIT certification, and right now I don't have the source inside of my head, but I remember reading about forgiveness and studies that were done on forgiveness and what it was capable of doing for people who were in prison,
Yes.
hearing families that forgave them, et cetera, and how they never reoffended after that.
Yes.
Or their reoffense was much, much lower because they were able to also close the loop on their end. And one of the things that I remember reading through my studies was withholding forgiveness is the equivalent of revenge. Which is really the equivalent of hatred.
Which is really like self-sacrifice.
Yeah.
Like you are literally harming yourself in the process.
Yes, because if we go back to the energetics of it all, that exists within you.
Yeah.
And can you imagine all sorts of tension patterns and just really what it's like to exist in the world, deeply unhappy, without just seeking that step forward. And again, that's not to say that somebody else's behavior is okay.
Yes, exactly.
That means that you are stepping outside of needing to be stuck inside of that story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is when it comes to someone else's behavior that is unkind, or they're betraying, or they're lying, or they're hurting others, or whatever it is that they're doing that you might think they don't deserve forgiveness for, also keep in mind that they're not living their best life. Like, it's not like they're joyfully doing what they're doing. Mm-hmm. They don't want to be doing what they're doing. They're under some sort of a spell, or they themselves are looped in the energy of this is what they believe about themselves.
Yeah.
Like, there's this really interesting practice of how to quit smoking. And it's you de-hypnotize yourself from being a smoker. So you no longer carry the identity of being a smoker. And this is for any of you who do smoke cigarettes, or you have any addiction, look up Alan Carr's Easy Way to Stop Smoking. He also has an easy way to stop social media and some other things as well. That process is so powerful because he has you smoke cigarettes while listening to the audiobook or reading the audiobook. So you don't actually stop. You have nothing to lose. And then while you're doing that, you actively pity other people who you see smoking. Mm. You don't want to be something that you pity. And so it's such a powerful psychological process. So this is another way that you could, in essence, do this work, is to actually feel a level of like sadness and compassion and pity for that person for what they did to you.
Yeah.
Like I think of some people who have really fucked up, having really, really good opportunities in our business, with my friendship. And genuinely, it's not even like I don't spin around in the holding on to it for a really, really long time anymore. It is genuinely like, fuck, I feel so sad for you that you fucked that up. like I feel so genuinely sad that is the place that you're in, where you had to like shut yourself off from receiving, or whatever it is in that circumstance. And that's a really beautiful place for me to get to, because I used to spin around in those things and hang on to it for too long and spin on it and all of that. But it's really looking at that other person and actually having like that level of compassion and sympathy and maybe a little bit of pity of like, damn, that really sucks that you did that.
Yeah, you had a good thing going.
Because I no longer make it mean anything about me. And I think that that's a really, really powerful way to do it. And then as a result, one of the most powerful ways to get through life is to realize that life isn't happening to you. Okay, so those people and what they did is not happening to you. It's happening for you. All of the things that have caused a mass amount of pain in our lives, whether it's financial losses, whether it's business losses, whether it's friendship losses, whatever it is that we can heal through, grow through, and forgive through, inherently makes us literally more valuable as a human being. And the less control it has over us, the more free we are to then go and help others get free. So it's almost like you owe it to yourself to forgive yourself and others, because it genuinely makes you a more valuable human being to society. Does that sound weird?
No, it doesn't. And when you talk about this as being part of a society, something that you said to me kind of off the cuff is something that, I mean, I have continued to pass on to really anybody who listens.
Oh, what is it?
Because it's really easy to match people's energy, right? So if you meet someone in a grocery store or customer service base and they're rude, then it's easy to match their energy and be rude back. And so there's often this question of like, well, how do you navigate, the most challenging individuals? And something that you said to me once was, that's somebody's baby. And you had said that to me, if I remember correctly, when we lived in an area that has a really high transient population and a high drug population. And we were right by one of the main hospitals in the city. And so there was just a lot happening all the time and the energy was pretty funky. And so I remember, both of us just stopping on a corner and you saying that, like, that's somebody's baby.
Yes.
Which makes me feel really emotional, because if you can turn it in that degree, that's somebody's son that used to be just a baby in their arms. And what world did they exist within that's now how they're choosing to live their life?
Yeah.
Like, it has nothing to do with you and me walking by. There was a long-standing story that happened before we even showed up on the corner of that street.
Well, and even when our shed got broken into and they stole our brand new bike pump that we bought, that we were so excited about. It's like, even that, it's like that we're not, they don't see us as human beings. Like, they are truly in the
They're surviving.
They're surviving. Yeah.
They're just trying to make it through day to day.
Yeah. And so who am I to, again, withhold? Now, I am admittedly scared that I'm going to have to now face like truly something that I won't be able to forgive. That is always one of the things that scares me, especially about teaching. Yeah. I don't have
the lesson that shows up to be God, like, can you be true to your word?
Yeah, but it comes down to you, because there are things that would, like, I don't know how I would forgive if something happened to you, or if somebody hurt Roman, or that. It's like, I don't want to learn the lesson. Okay. So let's just leave it at this.
Let's just uncreate and destroy that.
Let's just uncreate and destroy. But you know what I mean? And I will say, when it comes to anything like animal abuse related, it's not like I'm just like, oh, I forgive them. Like, no, like there are really difficult, uncomfortable emotions. And I do feel that I'm still confused as to why people who don't abuse animals are not the ones who are being tested on for products. I think that's a really great, because then it evens it out, and there's like it makes it so that it's like,
like, why are you testing mascara on a pig when you could do it on someone who hurt the pig in the first place?
Yes, exactly. I'm like, that would be badass. So if somebody has connections to the government, let's get that locked in. But I will say, it's not like, there are still things that that scare the hell out of me if I was to have to be faced with learning to forgive. But up to this point, I've had to forgive some pretty difficult things, and it always makes me better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such a test of, just like you said, of having grace for yourself and for humanity. Can you imagine if all of us were taught from kindergarten up to grade 12, if we make it to grade 12, the importance of every single day forgiving ourselves for something and forgiving somebody else for whatever they chose to impose upon us. And what would be different in the world if we were able to truly do that? Not just say the words.
Yes.
Not just say the words, because those words are usually attached to some sort of belief. And I want to make the difference. And I often have to correct this with our students. There's a difference between I forgive you for hurting me.
Oh yeah.
I forgive you for making me mad.
Yeah, I forgive you for making me feel.
Versus I forgive you for all the ways I believe I don't deserve to be treated with respect. So yes, I am forgiving you for the circumstance, but I'm also forgiving myself for believing that I was even okay with that to begin with.
Right. Oh,
right.
It's a level of radical responsibility as well.
Yeah.
Now there is nuance to that, because you can't take I'm not going to take radical responsibility as a 3-year-old who was abused. That's
of course
right. But
circumstantial, being at certain places at certain times, right?
Yeah.
Things when it comes to like assault, etc. Like there are things that are so complex and beyond our control, right?
Yeah.
What I'm talking about are these situations where people, are classified, well, they're just the cranky old man on the corner. Well, the only reason he's the cranky old man on the corner is because he has been in a state of crankiness or anger for an extended period of time that has just become his personality. Maybe nobody sat with him and actually listened to why he was angry in the first place. Or maybe he is bent because he wasn't or doesn't know how to just step into consolidating and forgiving himself for whatever it is or whatever ended up happening. But that really is that full consciousness of it happened to me, it happened for me, and now it's happening through me, right? And so there's 3 different levels, and you can't just go from to me to through me. Like there is a whole sequence of events, and I'm sure we'll make a whole podcast in regards to enjoying the journey, which I think is a really important conversation as well, because sometimes it doesn't feel good, but it's so important along the way. And I out of countless sessions at this point, I wouldn't say that nobody's ever like excited to feel that 30-second emotion that they haven't revisited for 40 years. But it's as soon as that 30 seconds dissolves it, and the forgiveness, which is pure love in my opinion, allows to envelop that, it's the immediate relief that follows it. It's that unhooking of, oh my gosh, I'm not even mad about it anymore. Oh my gosh, I'm not even, just like you said, we're just in an instant, you were able to drop all of that in between you and your dad.
Totally. Yeah. And then even towards my stepmom too, because I do genuinely feel so sad for the direction that her life also went as a result of her behavior. And I know that she was abused. So how could I expect anything different from her behavior if she was also operating out of survival and withholding love because love equaled pain?
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, it is a complex journey and one of the most freeing ones. And we have seen some of the literal most miraculous healings on the planet because of forgiveness, including my migraines that nothing resolved. The highest form of pain meds, massage, acupuncture, herbs, brain scans that came back inconclusive. Nothing touched the migraines. What touched it? It was forgiving my dad for making me hide a gift. It was just the most random thing.
So random.
And then so many other things after. So y'all, if you're struggling with forgiveness, definitely reach out to one of our SIT practitioners. And if you want to be the kind of practitioner that can guide people to find those memories that are locked in the soma, we say there's a secret in the soma. It's a belief, a memory, trauma that is trying to be seen. It's just a signal. And if you can learn to read that signal, that's powerful work that you start to do. You go from managing symptoms to literally liberating people on a life level. Just like that man that I talked about. Again, like, how much could his relationship with his wife change once he once he was able to forgive himself? So if you want to be the kind of practitioner that liberates humans in that way, head to www.sitwithit.co/certification. Check out if we have an upcoming cohort, or you can even potentially start with self-study, which is where you can actually learn the whole modality ahead of time and then jump into the cohort in the future. It's epic what our practitioners are doing with forgiveness being just one of the pieces of arsenal that are in our toolkit. So head to sitwithit.co/certification. Thank you for being here. And if this episode resonated with you on a personal level, we'd love to hear from you. You can email us, hello@sitwithit.co, or message us on Instagram, sitwithit.co. We'll see you in a future episode.
Much love.
If you got value from this episode, share it with a fellow renegade and make sure to subscribe. Leave a review for your chance to win some swag and a shout out on the podcast. And for the episode show notes, head to therenegadepodcast.com. We'll see you on the next episode.